I've always loved sports cars and cars that handle right. Grew up racing, that sort of thing. And when I built this car, I kind of wanted, I tried my hardest to implement some of those ideas into it, such as handling, performance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we did a good job because it handles very nicely. I mean, it's got just the right amount of power. Well, you can use all the power all the time.
Yeah, you want to be able to use every bit of power, and to me it makes it, you know, they're just saying it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Right. Welcome to that episode of Jay Leno's Garage. You know, the first vehicle I ever got was a 1934 Ford pickup truck. Got it when I was 14 years old, and with my dad, we got it running and I drove it. The second vehicle I got, my first real sports car, was a Datsun 1600 Roadster. I believe it was a 65, 66. It was yellow, 4-speed, 1600. I love that thing. They were just great cars. So this is one of those. And I like to think maybe this is what I might have done with mine if I still had it now 50-something years later. So it's kind of cool to see. This belongs to a young gentleman, Mike Spagnola. Mike, come on in. I know Mike through his dad, and he told me about this car. I said, well, let's get it on the show. Obviously, heavily modified. What have you done to it?
So this car started as a just basically a bare shell. I bought the car for $600 and started.
Did it have an engine for $600?
It had a block. It didn't have a head.
Oh, okay.
It had, I think, one seat in it.
Right.
It was pretty, you know, desolate when I picked it up.
Now, how bad was the body? Because I know I have a Honda 600 from this same period, and Japanese steel at that time was just terrible because it was all body. We had to cut all new metal in here. Did you have to add a lot of new metal to it?
There was a couple spots on the floor pan that I had to go through and repair, but I got really lucky with this car, and it was, you know, pretty strong and pretty straight. So it was a great platform to kind of do a build off of. Okay, obviously the wheelbase is the same, right? Mm-hmm. That's all stock. It's the flares that kind of throw me because it makes it look bigger than it was at the time. Yeah. I assume you're not running a Datsun 1600 motor in this. What do you have? Yeah, so what we decided to go with on this car is a motor that came out of the Sylvia in Japan, 240SX in Japan. Oh, sure. And it's a SR20 DET, factory turbocharged. Wow. And we also utilize that transmission. From what year? What year would that motor be from? They were, you know, late 80s to 90s motors. Okay. And they got real popular in the drift scene in the States just because they're very strong motors. They put out a lot of power, nice and light. And then the other reason why I decided to choose that is to stay true to the Datsun name, you know, to keep a Nissan Datsun together. What's it, 2-liter? It's a 2-liter motor, yeah. Mm-hmm. 4-cylinder? 4-cylinder. Okay. And it's turbocharged? Turbocharged, yeah, from the factory. This has a aftermarket turbo on it. So what kind of power are you getting with the turbo? It makes 300 horsepower to the wheels. Wow. And about 260-ish torque. Brakes? What brakes? So once again, to stay true to the Nissan name, I wanted to utilize something from that platform. So what I have on here is a front brake and rear brake off of a 300ZX twin turbo. And then for the master cylinders to power them, I ended up going with a tilt and overhung pedal box. Smooth out the firewall a little bit and give you some nice brake feel. And well, it looks beautiful. Can we open the hood? Yeah, of course. Let's see the motor. Of course, of course. Well, I guess now I have to say engine because motor means electric. Yeah. Okay. Well, very impressive. Yeah, oh, he's got a little gold foil here. That's a heat shield, I assume? Yeah, I mean, the turbo creates, you know, quite a bit of heat, and being that close to the paint, a little bit of protection there never hurts. And gold is always the best reflector of heat, isn't it? Of course, yeah. So that's got some real gold. That's got to be an expensive piece of foil on there. Yeah, that's the most expensive part of the car for sure. Really? No. No, it's easy. Yeah. That's funny. Boy, it fits in there nicely. It looks like a big block from here. I mean, wow. That's why I really like using that motor, and I've used that motor on a couple builds. It's just because it's simple. You know, that was kind of the beauty of these old cars is they're just simple motors, 2 carburetors, coil, and bada bing. And that radiator looks actually small, but it's obviously must do the job, huh? Yeah, it keeps the motor nice and cool. it's a similar size to like a like a Honda Civic, something like that.
Do you run non-water-based coolant or just regular coolant?
I use a water wetter.
Okay, okay. Purpose-built motors. Is that the name of your shop?
Yeah, so that's the name of my shop, and kind of the the name that I kind of tag on all my cars. I believe that when you build a car, you build it for a purpose.
Right,
and, you don't wear your shoes to the club or your flip-flops to the club. You know, everything has a purpose.
Right. Well, maybe you don't, but yeah. So do you do other people's work too, or just your own cars?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I do enjoy building kind of my own cars and selling them when I'm done with them.
Right.
But
see, that would kill me. How can you sell it after you're done with it? You're never done with it. You always want to go back to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many cars have you built? What number is this?
So this is number 1.
Right. Okay.
Basically the timeline was I graduated from college and worked a job for a year and decided I wanted to start my own thing, and decided to start out with building a car and taking it over to SEMA. And so this is car number 1.
Well, it's a beautiful job. How long did it take you to do it from start to finish?
This car, start to finish, took 5 months.
Really? That's it?
5 months,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's working full time, isn't it? Now, do you sort of build it as you go, or do you build the whole car in your head first, lay it out on paper, and then proceed?
When we started, basically any project, when we start, you kind of get a render. You work with a render to kind of put your ideas on paper, because I can't draw a stick figure, right?
Right.
And so if you utilize, an artist to kind of put your ideas out, it helps you build the car in your mind.
And the nice thing is, there's enough room in this engine compartment. I mean, it really takes up the whole thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it takes up the whole thing. I tried to, simplify things where I can, such as that, originally you'd have the brake master cylinders that come out of the firewall.
Right.
And that's been all smooth. Your master cylinders are now under here.
Okay, so you reach them from under the dash?
Yeah, so that it's an overhung pedal box, and the master cylinders are right here.
Okay.
For example, like the wastegate, I hid underneath the manifold, and just to really try to simplify it to kind of give that sense of the original motor, just how simple it was.
I notice you have a scoop in the hood there. Any place to let the air out, or does it get hot in this compartment?
It doesn't get too hot. It's pretty open. It kind of flows in and out pretty well.
Right.
I haven't had too many issues as far as, heat soak or anything like that.
And suspension-wise, what have you done?
So suspension is a custom, leaf pack and custom coils in the front, and it does pretty well. It's a stiff car for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with the minimal clearance that you have for the wheels and tires.
Did you have to do a lot of chassis bracing?
So that's the amazing part about the Datsun Roadster. From the factory, it's an X-braced boxed frame. It's a very stiff, rigid frame, and it allows for you to put big power without any twist in it. So there was some modifications done for sure, but minimal, I'd say.
Now, do you have a top for it as well?
On this one, I don't. No. I wanted to keep this one a true roadster.
Right.
It basically only goes out when it's nice and sunny and the weather's perfect. So
do you carry a tonneau just to cover the half? So
I do have one, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very bad. It shows you, I mean, it's just a good-sized car. You could actually get a small back seat in there at one point, I think.
Yeah, so the early ones, the 1500s, they did have the rear seat in the back, the sideways seat.
And in Japan, it's a glass windshield, right?
Yeah, glass windshield.
Is this a stock windshield?
Stock windshield, yeah. So
the body is basically stock except for the flares, correct?
Yeah. So the body kits, the flares, and the front air dam was designed by a company called Pandem Rocket Bunny.
Okay.
Mr. Miura in Japan designed it, and the development of that is actually a really cool story, and it's a true testament to the automotive industry and how people come together to create something. The car was scanned at the SEMA garage in Diamond Bar.
Right.
Those files were then sent to Mr. Miura in Japan. He developed the body kit and shipped it back to me 2 weeks before SEMA. Fit perfect on the car.
Wow.
We put the wheels together and off it went. I mean.
Now see, I don't know what the rules are in Japan. In Japan, are you allowed to take an engine from one car, put in another car, and register? Like here, in California. I know Europeans go crazy with what we get away with here.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's the same in Japan. They must sort of kind of look at the way we do things versus the way they do things. Are they surprised when they see a vehicle like this with this much horsepower? Because would this be allowed in Japan? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I can't say for sure on that one, but I have had a couple people mention that they're surprised that you're able to do stuff like this.
Yeah, because I know in Japan a lot of times once a car gets more than 5 years old, you actually pay more to register.
Yeah, and insurance as well, I think. Yeah.
And they just junk them. Because there's a guy down the street here that sells 5-year-old Japanese engines. They have maybe 60,000, 50,000. That's nothing.
Yeah.
And they sell them secondhand, you know, it's for hot rodders and whatnot. Because I guess they can't do that in Japan. So
yeah.
It's fun to see the Japanese influence with the American ideas. You know, it's really fun because no one, I think, in Japan would conceive of a 1600 having 300 horsepower.
Yeah.
And it's got the 5-speed in it as well. Okay.
Yeah.
You got a lot of tire on here. Does it? I guess you can break these tires loose at 300.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Second, third gear rolling into it, it gets a little squirrely on you.
Yeah.
The car's a handful, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Now, do you use stock steering box, or have you modified that as well?
Stock steering box.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a custom sway bar in it. Some anti-roll bars in the back.
Right. Let's close up the hood. Very nice. And you got a full-size trunk, right?
Yeah, full-size trunk.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny in cars now, you don't get sports cars, you only get them. And it's a pretty big trunk, isn't it?
Yeah, let me grab the key real quick.
Need the key to open it?
There's a fuel cell in there that takes up a little room, but still good for a suitcase or two.
Yeah, that's all right. Cool.
Yeah.
You run a small battery as well. Nicely done. Got your jack, but you have no tire, but you got a jack.
No tire. Yeah, no tire. That was kind of my idea with the car, is to key into some of the, the aftermarket things that, my generation's doing, but also leave some of the old, original stuff. I want to leave the old jack in it.
Right.
I want to leave the dash the way that it was, because I think that's one of the best parts of this.
Up. Here's your key. I think, anything else we need to see here before we take it for a ride?
I wanted to show this real quick. This is kind of one of my favorite parts about just cars and building cars and that sort of thing, is its story, right? Someone owned this before me. And so when I got the car, this was the original glove compartment cover.
Oh, wow, look at that.
And it's filled full of plaques of the original owner that did rallies in the car.
It said Braille Rally, Braille Rally. Did the owner have a family member that was blind or something? Is that why they?
So the Braille Rally is something that I believe still goes on today. But what it is, someone who's unable to see sits passenger.
Right.
And it's a rally that the coordinates are given in Braille.
Oh,
and so you have to work with the passenger to, get to your destination.
Oh, that's and this goes. Well, look, that says 1969,
67 there.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So this has been an enthusiast-owned car since the beginning.
Yeah, and I thought that was just such a cool thing.
I think that's great. I think that's very cool. That's very cool. Well, let's take her for a spin and see what she does. Still got plenty of room.
It's a tight squeeze, but
it pulls right nicely. Okay, it's got all kinds of power.
Yeah, it's you get into boosts and it really puts you back.
It's funny. Now it feels like a Datsun. You know why it's called Datsun, right?
Why is that?
Well, when Nissan came to America, many Japanese cars that came over in the early 60s literally shook themselves apart on our freeways. they weren't used to sustained high speeds of 70, 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have those kind of roads in Japan back in the day. So they changed the name to Datsun, that if the car did become an embarrassment or was anything less than they thought it would be, it wouldn't hurt the Nissan name. And then when the Datsun 240, when it finally showed that they were worthy of the name Nissan, they then switched it back. But they just called it Datsun because they didn't want to be embarrassed if the cars were not, you know, Subaru had that 360 thing, that silly little...
Yeah, the tiny little car.
Yeah, and that was sort of a joke, and it didn't help them at all. There was a man named Mr. K. You ever hear of him?
Yeah, Mr. K, of course, yeah.
Mr. K has been to my garage.
Really?
Yeah, Mr. K was, I think, 100 or a little over 100 when he came. He came in a wheelchair.
Really?
Yeah, and he, very exuberant, you know, he was one of the few Japanese who understood the American market. Like, you know, when this came out, it had names like Fair Lady and Lilac. And Mr. K's, you know, Americans like names Z, X, you know, that kind of stuff. So they said, Z, yes, okay. So they made it 240Z, and it was very successful. But that's all because of him. He understood the American market. You know, I have some ads from my Cosmo, the Japanese rotary car. And the ads are like, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's the supercar, you know, just weird with Japanese guys in beetle boots and girls dump, you know, just, they didn't really know the Western market, you know? So they just took out ads they thought might appeal. But Mr. K really understood the American market. And he was probably the most Americanized Japanese person in Japan, because he loved the music and, you know, and the hot dogs in America and all that kind of silly stuff, you know?
So I heard when the cars first came from Japan, the early cars that had Fair Lady on them.
Right, yeah.
They pulled them off because they thought it was too feminine. Was it Mr. K that
Mr. K was responsible, I believe, for the name 240Z, you know.
Gotcha.
Numbers that show the engine significance, 2.4 liter, and then a Z for, you know, performance or sporty or anything like that, you know. Like Jaguar used to have SS, and then World War II started, and the initials SS came to signify the elite Nazi guards. You know? So they quickly changed it.
Datsun.
See, people calling out the name on the street car.
Yeah.
Oh, I love hearing that waste.
Oh yeah, that's. If you look at my garage right now, everything I have is a 4-cylinder turbocharged.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just
have a rear view mirror? Am I missing?
No.
They never do. How do you know what's behind you?
You just shine up the chrome a little bit.
Yeah. Boy, it feels like a V6 or a small V8.
Yeah. It and the turbo package that I, you know, went with really does not give too much lag. When you're ready for the power, it comes.
You know, I sort of enjoy some lag just because, you know, I've got a Corvair 66. That was the first turbocharged car. Well, not in the Jetfire, but anyway, the Corvair, and it had no pop-off valve or anything. You just sort of, but when you got up about 4,500, oh, it started, it was like funny, it started to pull a little bit. Kicks in.
Yeah, it goes. Yeah, for sure.
I love the turbocharger because it's like free horsepower.
Yeah.
You know, you got that wastegate, it's standard exhaust. Why not use them when they're coming out of the engine? You know, it's smart. It's so clever.
Now, for your Roadster that you had, did you leave it completely stock? Did you do wheels or anything?
No,
like that?
there were no wheels. I was 16. The car was a year old. You know, and it was just a little sports car. I mean, there was no aftermarket for that stuff in '66. I mean, there might have been a little bit, but not much. And it was always, like where I live, mail order.
Gotcha.
You know, you'd get it like 6-8 weeks later, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. It's just like, you're just hitting the power button.
Yeah.
And no cowl shake. very, it's firm, but it doesn't seem stiff.
No, it's firm. I mean, on decently paved roads, it drives great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it handles wonderfully. You know, some of the modern cars, you have to have your elbow like this out the window. You know, this you can sort of rest it, you know.
It kind of feels right driving it one hand, you know,
Yeah,
out the window.
Exactly.
It's non-power brakes, right? But if you feel it, the brakes kick in pretty good. You got to put some force into it, but it stops.
They're fine.
How long did you have your Roadster when you had it?
I had it for a couple of years and cracked it up. You know, stupid kid stuff.
Yeah.
You know. Then I bought a Buick 401 Grand Sport with a 4-speed.
Okay. How much was one of those cars? Like, what were those cars going for back in the day?
Let me see. Well, I bought mine in probably 67.
Okay.
It was a 65, 66. I paid $800.
Oh, wow. Really?
And it was not brand new, but pretty new.
Yeah.
But that's what they only cost $2,600 or something, you know, so that was about right.
And what was kind of the, how was it accepted in the car community back there? Was it a...
Well, you know, when you grow up in a little town in New England, anything with less than 4 doors might as well be a Ferrari.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, it's a working class town at the time. And, you know, for example, my friend Mark, his dad had a 2-door 63 Chevy Super Sport with a 283 and a 4-barrel. Oh my God, that was an unbelievable car. Yeah. It was like the coolest. Everybody else's dad had a station wagon or, you know, the big 6-cylinder or whatever from Chrysler or Chevy. So the idea that, oh, Mark's dad had this Super Sport, wow, there you go. That was just unbelievable. I mean, back in the 60s, motorcycles were faster than cars for the most part, until the real muscle war started, and it started to, like a Harley 883 was a fast bike. Yeah. Now it's not even, please. You know, in the 60s, 0 to 60 and anything under 10 seconds was considered really fast. Huh. I mean, the Chrysler Hemi was the fast accelerating American car, 0 to 60 at 6.3. And I thought it was a misprint. It can't be that, you know. Now people are, I mean, you got a Tesla that's 2 seconds or under, you know.
I've always loved sports cars and cars that handle right. Grew up racing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I built this car, I kind of wanted, I tried my hardest to implement some of those ideas into it, such as handling, performance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we did a good job because it handles very nicely.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, it's got just the right amount of power.
Yeah, I feel like the power is good for it. I'm a big fan of not overpowering cars, right?
Yeah, well, you can use all the power all the time.
Yeah, you want to be able to use every bit of power, and to me it makes it, you know, there's this saying, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Right. So what did it cost you to build a car like this? How much did you have in it? Can I ask you?
Yeah, so on this car I have roughly around, you know, $25,000.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really you know, with the help of the community, and that's really what it's about, is getting yourself surrounded by some good people with help, and you can make something happen for, you know, a reasonable amount of money.
Yeah, so we got your website up there, so if people want to contact you, just go to the website, correct?
Yeah, Purpose Built Motors, Instagram, that's kind of
all right, congratulations. Nice job.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful build. It's fun to see people using, I mean, it's nice to spend money, but it's nice to use your talent, your initiative, and your intuitiveness, whatever you want to call it. It's really great. Congratulations, just a beautiful job.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me on the show and everything. Really appreciate it.
And this is a conversion people can do, right? It's not. I mean, obviously a lot of talent, and you're a pro, but there's not a lot here a person could not do. Well, you did it yourself, so there you go.
Yeah, my biggest advice to anyone looking to build anything, especially the young generation, is do it and screw up and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And I certainly have a whole garage full of them.
Yeah,
Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. And say hi to the old man for me.
Yeah, will do. Absolutely.
See you guys next week.
you.